This is a cattle ranch. 11 people work here. 1 manager, 8 stockmen, 1 operator, and 1 cook. Everything doesn't seem to be extraordinary. But this ranch in the middle of the desert is bigger than the entire country of Israel. Yeah, 1 ranch, bigger than a country, run by 11 people. This is Australia.
But here's the main question.
How does Australia have
This vast, silent, and so empty landscapes inside a country that's the size of the United States? Just to be clear, this massive region is almost the size of the entire continental United States, merely half of China and larger than India, and yet almost nobody lives there. So what is really going on here?
Okay, let's look at the world map. We divide the world into 7 continents. You've got North America over here, South America down here. Slide east and you hit Europe, Africa, Asia, and then there's Antarctica, way down at the bottom. And right above it sits Australia. Here's what's interesting. Australia has only about 26 million people in its continent. Only 26 million. This means in the whole country of the US, people live only in New York, and everything else is just empty. And it gets more interesting. 90% of Australians live on just here. So the real mystery isn't the size of Australia, it's the emptiness. What's happening in this giant silent middle? Why does almost no one live there? And that's what today's video is about, because the moment you zoom into the middle of Australia, everything starts to make sense. But to understand this whole mystery, we have to start with something really basic. Rain. You know how it works. But stay with me for a second. This is important. Rain happens when warm air rises. It cools down and turns into clouds. Simple. But Australia sits right under the zone where air from the equator sinks back down. Hot air rises at the equator, travels high above, and then drops right over here like a giant invisible lid. And when the air is being pushed downward, clouds can't form. No clouds means no rain, and no rain means no water. But that's not all. Australia also has a giant AC unit blasting across its southern edge. It's coming from Antarctic, so-called the Antarctic Circumpolar Current. It's a freezing ocean current that wraps the bottom of the continent and keeps the lower atmosphere cold and heavy. Cold air doesn't rise either. So again, no lift, no clouds, no rain. But there is one more way to make clouds: mountains. If the air won't rise on its own, the wind in the mountains can force it upward. Mountains grab the wind, shove it upward, cool it, squeeze it, and wring rain out of it like a sponge. But Australia's mountains? They're not exactly what one would call mountains. Take a look. The highest peaks are only about 2,000 meters. Compare this to the Rockies that hit 4,000. The Andes blast past 6,000. Their mountains are not exactly up for the clouds. So what happens is that the air stays flat. Clouds never really get a chance. So people say.
Australia ended up with the worst possible combo. Sinking air, a freezing ocean current, mountains that barely lift anything.
And when the land dries out this much, everything is difficult.
Australia is a giant interior.
The outback
is beautiful and almost totally empty. Oh, not this outback.
The outback. Vast, untamed, and shaped by extremes. A land of blistering heat and relentless drought. If you think there isn't much out here, think again.
But there are things that live here. It has so many record-breaking animals. The most venomous snake in the world.
That is an inland taipan, a fierce snake, the most venomous snake on Earth. But since they're actually considered a rare snake, and they're so hard to find, generally they're not aggressive, they won't go and attack people.
The deadliest spider.
These spiders are downright toxic, and while they may not match the Brazilian wandering spiders in drop-for-drop toxicity, there's something insidious about their venom. Through one reason or another, the venom of the Sydney funnel web is extremely dangerous towards primates. Where a dog or a cat could easily survive a large envenomation, a human or other primate could be dead in as little as 15 minutes.
The biggest crocodile on Earth.
The Northern Territory, Australia. Home to the biggest crocodilians on Earth, saltwater crocs. In the rivers here, salties, which can reach 20 feet in length.
Even the kangaroos are jacked.
A dog has been rescued from this particular
That poor
kangaroo.
dog.
Look at him.
And
no, put him up, put him up. Here we go.
Oh my God, look at the muscles on that kangaroo.
What is he lifting?
He's benching a lot,
cow.
wait.
This is a small kangaroo, but if you ever cross this little guy flexing at you in the outback, you better run fast.
As you can see,
The land is harsh.
so everything that lives here became tougher, sharper, and meaner. So venom got stronger, armor got thicker, reflexes got faster. Everything sharpened itself just for survival.
By our standards, this place feels impossible. And yet, it has been home to Indigenous Australians for tens of thousands of years.
We're going to be walking around on country, learning about the Indigenous people that used to live on these lands thousands of years ago, so there'll be a lot to take in.
Ngatanwa, waria pa kake, ten gundij mara pa, kerep gundij pa, gilga gundij pa, meeting, which is welcome, brothers and sisters, to Gundij Mara, Kerep Gundij, and Gilga Gundij country.
They believed the land is the law. If you live by it, it will look after you. Because it's not that we own the land owns us.
This is our vitamin C. Look here.
Alright, that's seriously.
We chop them,
Yeah.
we make medicine out of it.
But then, another group showed up. In 1788, the British arrived, but it was never for adventure. They came here because their cities were packed, crime was rising.
Especially after the American Revolution.
Britain lost the only place it used to send its prisoners, so they picked somewhere new, far away to send their prisoners, Australia. When the British settled, they stayed in one of the few places with decent water and soil, the East Coast. But there was one problem. That land wasn't empty. Aboriginal communities had lived there for tens of thousands of years. Yet the British simply declared the land terra nullius. The land belongs to no one. So conflicts became inevitable.
But before European contact, it was home to hundreds of distinct Aboriginal nations or tribes, each with its own territory and language. The estimates range from 500 to 600 tribes, in about 400 Aboriginal languages, 306 being of the Pama-Yungan language family.
Aboriginal groups across the continent fought back in what's now known as the Frontier Wars.
Fighting a guerrilla war against the occupiers of his land. So he doesn't attack big places, he attacks isolated huts. He knows that they're short of food, so he burns their corn. I mean, this is a very clever use of the resources that the Aborigines have.
They're stealing tools like tomahawks and axes to cause great harm and danger.
There's many raids and they're very fast. They disarm people. Everything they own that they can carry, they take away. Clothing, food, tools, weapons. They strip everything, then they burn the place down.
Over time, more than 100,000 Indigenous people are believed to have been killed. The British dominated the land, and the country introduced something called the White Australia policy.
Around this time, countries like the United States, Canada, Argentina, and Brazil were bringing in millions of people to build their populations and their economies.
But this policy blocked non-European immigration and kept any immigration out. Australia wanted the land only for the whites. But then, World War II happened. Australia was caught completely off guard. There were no armies waiting inland, no cities to fall back to. For Australia, it was a shock.
Because in that moment, they realized the country was too empty, too exposed, and too vulnerable. The policy began to crumble, replaced by a wave of immigration from every corner of the world.
Starting in the late 1940s, especially through the 50s and 70s, people came from everywhere. Italy, Greece, Hungary, Vietnam, Lebanon, China.
Nearly 1 in 3 Australians was born somewhere else, and this is the Australia you probably picture today. But even with all this growth, no one chose to live in the middle. When almost an entire country lives on a thin strip of coastline, the coastline becomes fragile. One hit wave, one drought, one bad fire season. It only takes one, and there's nowhere else for people to go. The middle of Australia can absorb anything, so every shock hits the edge. And this is exactly what happened in 2020. That edge was pushed to its limit. In 2020, the whole country was burned. It was metafires.
There are downright apocalyptic images coming out of Australia right now.
The bushfire crisis has exploded on a scale.
Towards the end of 2019, Australia was hit by the most devastating bushfire season the country has ever seen. By mid-January, an estimated 10 million hectares had been incinerated.
19 million hectares went up in flames. That's the size of all of England and Wales combined.
3 billion animals are estimated to have died. People evacuated entire towns overnight. Australia has always had fires, but these weren't the normal. They were climate-charged, hotter temperatures, longer droughts, the perfect firestorm. Some experts claim this is just the beginning. This is Australia. Lights around the edge, the whole darkness in a no.
Australia succeeded by building everything on the very edges of a continent that doesn't want people in its center.
But now climate change is testing every part of the continent. Question is, how much longer can a country thrive on the edges? A century ago, when geographer named Griffith Taylor said something that sounded ridiculous, he said, Australia would never hold more than 20 billion people. People laughed, called him a pessimist. But for almost 100 years, he wasn't wrong. Australia didn't pass 20 million people until 2005.
This continent, as massive as it looks on a map, is brutally limited in real life. Nearly empty.
The rain barely reaches the interior.
Rivers fade into the soil before they find the ocean.
And the moment you leave the coast, almost everything left depends on disappears.
But today, with all that climate change,
heat waves and bushfires, droughts, flooding. When it comes to extreme weather, Australia seems to be constantly making headlines.
Is the coast sustainable in the long run? And if it is, for how long?